5 years into our marriage, I could honestly say life with Emma was as close to perfect as it could get. We had built a beautiful life together, our cozy home with its warm-toned walls, a backyard garden she loved tending to, and evenings spent laughing over the smallest things. If someone had asked me to describe my life, I would have called it happy and stable. Emma was the light of our house, always full of energy and excitement. She had a way of turning even the most mundane days into something special. Our routine wasn't flashy, but it was ours. Quiet mornings with coffee and the paper, occasional date nights at our favorite Italian restaurant, and long talks about everything and nothing. That weekend started like any other. It was Saturday morning, and Emma was bustling around the kitchen, preparing her to-go coffee while I sat at the counter, scrolling through the news on my phone. "I'm heading out with the girls today," she announced, brushing a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "We're doing some shopping, maybe grabbing lunch. You'll be okay without me for a few hours." I smiled. "I think I'll survive. Try not to max out the credit card, though." She laughed, rolling her eyes playfully. "No promises." She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her purse, and disappeared, out the door with the same energy she always carried. It was one of the things I loved about her, her ability to find joy in the simplest things, even something as routine as a shopping trip. When she returned that afternoon, her excitement was impossible to miss. She walked in with a boutique bag in hand, her eyes sparkling like a kid who'd just been handed their favorite candy. "Wait until you see this," she said, setting the bag on the kitchen counter and pulling out her purchase. She held up a swimsuit, and I had to admit, it was stunning. The vibrant blues and greens shimmered under the kitchen lights, reminding me of ocean waves. The design was intricate, almost like it had been painted by hand. "It's beautiful," I said sincerely. "Let me guess. It was on sale?" Emma smirked. "Not even close. This is an exclusive piece," she said, emphasizing the word exclusive. "The boutique owner said it's one of a kind. Nobody else will have this exact swimsuit. Isn't it amazing?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "Leave it to you to find the most unique thing in the store." She smiled proudly, holding the swimsuit up to her frame and turning slightly as if imagining herself wearing it. I couldn't resist. It's like it was made for me. "You deserve it," I said, meaning every word. Seeing her this happy, over something as simple as a swimsuit, reminded me of why I fell in love with her in the first place. Emma had a way of making the world seem brighter, of finding beauty in places others might overlook. That evening, she insisted on cooking dinner. "My way of saying thank you for always putting up with me," she joked, though I didn't think I ever needed to be thanked for that. We spent the evening like we always did, talking, laughing, sharing stories from our week. She told me about the boutique, how she and her friends had stumbled upon it by accident, and how the shop owner had convinced her to splurge on the swimsuit. "Apparently, it's a small designer trying to make a name for themselves," she said, twirling pasta onto her fork. I felt like I was supporting something special. "You definitely found something special," I replied, glancing at the swimsuit now draped over the back of a chair. After dinner, we curled up on the couch to watch one of her favorite shows. As she rested her head on my shoulder, I couldn't help but think about how lucky I was. Life wasn't perfect. It never is. But it was ours. And in moments like these, it felt like nothing could ever come between us. Little did I know that shimmering swimsuit wasn't just a purchase. It was the beginning of something I never saw coming. A few weeks after Emma's shopping trip, she brought up her annual beach weekend with her friends. It was a tradition they'd started years before we got married. A few days of sun, sand, and wine to escape the stress of daily life. She always came back refreshed, full of funny stories and inside jokes I'd never fully understand. "I was talking to the girls," she said one evening over dinner, twirling a glass of wine in her hand. "We're thinking of doing the beach weekend again this year. Same spot as last time. You okay with me heading out for a few days?" I smiled, waving her off. "Of course. You need a break. I can hold down the fort here, just don't forget." "Sunscreen this time," she laughed. "I won't, promise." Emma's excitement was contagious. Over the next few days, she began planning her outfits, pulling out her suitcase and laying things neatly across the bed. "Help me choose," she said one evening, holding up two different sundresses. "Which one says effortlessly chic?" I pointed to the blue one. "That one. It brings out your eyes." She smiled, tossing it into the suitcase. "You're good at this." It didn't seem unusual at first. Emma had always been meticulous about her appearance, but this time she seemed to be putting in extra effort. She spent hours in front of the mirror, trying on different outfits and reapplying her makeup until it was just right. "I just want to look good in the photos," she explained when I teased her about spending more time getting ready than packing. "You know how the girls are. They'll post every picture online, and I don't want to look like the tired one in the group." I chuckled, shaking my head. "You couldn't look bad if you tried." She flashed me a grateful smile, leaning in for a quick kiss. "You're sweet." The morning she left, I helped her load her suitcase into the car. She looked radiant, wearing her favorite white sundress and wide-brimmed hat, her excitement practically radiating off her. "Have fun," I said, giving her a hug. "Text me when you get there, okay?" "I will," she promised. "And don't worry, I'll send you lots of photos." As I watched her car disappear down the street, I felt a small pang of loneliness. The house always felt a little too quiet when Emma was away, but I reminded myself how much she deserved this trip. True to her word, Emma kept me updated. Throughout the weekend, she sent me photos, stunning views of the beach at sunset, a glass of wine on a picnic blanket, and, of course, a picture of her lounging by the pool in her new swimsuit. She looked beautiful, the kind of effortlessly radiant that made me feel lucky all over again. "Having fun?" I texted back after one of her photos came through. "The best," she replied, followed by a string of sun and heart emojis. "Wish you were here, though." Her texts were brief but warm, and I found myself smiling at my phone every time it buzzed. She was happy, relaxed, and enjoying her time with her friends, just like she deserved. That night, I scrolled back through the pictures she'd sent me, lingering on the one of her by the pool. She looked carefree, with the sunlight glinting off the water behind her. I couldn't help but feel a little envious of the beach getaway she was having. "Miss you," I texted her before bed. "Miss you too," she replied almost instantly. As I closed my eyes that night, I felt content. Emma was having the time of her life, and soon enough, she'd be back home, filling the house with her laughter and stories from the weekend. At least, that's what I thought. Little did I know, there was far more to her trip than she let on. Emma's texts had slowed down by the second day of her trip. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was probably busy soaking up the sun, enjoying time with her friends. But as the hours ticked by without a message or a photo, a nagging feeling crept into the back of my mind. By the time Sunday evening rolled around, she still hadn't sent her usual on-the-way-home update. I tried to brush off my worry, convincing myself she'd simply lost track of time or her phone had died. But as I sat on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through social media, I couldn't shake the unease building in my chest. That's when I saw it. A photo popped up on my feed, posted by someone I didn't recognize. It was a man's profile. His name was unfamiliar, and his profile picture showed him lounging on a yacht, sunglasses perched on his nose. Normally, I would have kept scrolling without a second thought, but the photo he'd posted stopped me cold. It was the same pool photo Emma had sent me 2 days ago, the same shimmering water, the same sunlit background. But this one was from a slightly different angle, and it wasn't just Emma in the frame. The man who owned the profile was sitting beside her. His arm rested casually on the back of her chair, and they were both smiling, drinks in hand. The caption read, "Weekend. Vibes with the best company?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. At first, I told myself there had to be some mistake. Maybe this was just a random coincidence. Maybe this guy had been at the same resort, and Emma had just happened to sit near him. But as I scrolled through his profile, my denial began to crumble. There were more photos. In one, Emma was sitting cross-legged on a beach towel, laughing as the man poured wine into her glass. Another showed the two of them walking along the shoreline, her arm looped through his. They looked comfortable, intimate, like they were more than just strangers who'd crossed paths for a weekend. I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. My head swam with 1,000 questions, but none of them came with answers. Who was this man? Why was Emma with him? And why hadn't she told me? I clicked on his profile picture, desperate for more context. His name was Liam, and his profile was public, an endless stream of photos documenting a life I knew nothing about. The more I scrolled, the more I felt the walls of my reality closing in. Liam's captions painted a picture that made my stomach churn. Escaping the city with someone special. Sunsets are better with you. Until next time. Each post seemed to confirm what I didn't want to admit. This wasn't just a coincidence or a misunderstanding. Emma had lied to me. She wasn't on a trip with her friends. She was with him. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Emma. Heading home soon. Can't wait. To see you. Love you. I stared at the message, my hands trembling. The words felt hollow now, a cruel mockery of the trust I'd placed in her. How could she lie so easily? How could she tell me she loved me while sharing a weekend with another man? I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I sat there, replaying every detail of the past few weeks in my mind. The excitement over the swimsuit, the extra time she'd spent getting ready, the perfectly curated photos she'd sent me. It all seemed so innocent at the time, but now I could see it for what it was, a carefully crafted illusion. The cracks in our perfect life had been there all along. I just hadn't noticed them until now. Emma would be home soon, and when she walked through that door, I knew I wouldn't be able to look at her the same way again. I sat in the living room, the photos still open on my phone, my mind racing. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed louder than ever as I waited for Emma to come home. Every second felt like an eternity. I didn't know how I was going to confront her, but I knew I couldn't let this slide. I deserved the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The sound of her car pulling into the driveway snapped me out of my thoughts. My chest tightened as the door creaked open, and Emma walked in, suitcase in hand, her face glowing with the kind of happiness that used to light up my world. Now, it felt like a cruel joke. "Hey, babe," she called, her voice bright. "I'm home. You wouldn't believe how beautiful the sunsets were this weekend. I missed you." She walked into the living room, setting her bag down. When she saw my face, the smile faltered. "Tyler, what's wrong?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I turned my phone around, showing her the photo, the one of her and Liam by the pool. Her eyes widened, her face draining of color. For a moment, she just stared at it, frozen. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. "And don't lie to me, Emma. I already know." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, searching for words. "Tyler, it's not what you think," she said finally, her voice trembling. He's just a friend." "A friend?" I said, my tone dripping with disbelief. "A friend who just happens to be in every single photo of your girls' trip? A friend who puts his arm around you like that? Do you really think I'm that stupid?" She took a step toward me, her hands outstretched as if to calm me down. "I swear it wasn't anything serious. It was just, we didn't—" "It wasn't what you think." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "You didn't what, Emma? You didn't lie to me? You didn't spend the entire weekend with him while I sat here believing you were with your friends? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that." Tears welled up in her eyes. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "A mistake?" I snapped, my anger boiling over. "You didn't accidentally plan a weekend with him. You didn't accidentally let him take those photos. You made a choice, Emma. Over and over again, you chose him. So don't stand there and call it a mistake." She looked down, her shoulders slumping. For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of my own ragged breathing. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "You're right," she said. "It wasn't a mistake. I've been seeing him. It's been a few months. I didn't plan for it to go this far, Tyler. I didn't want to hurt you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My legs felt weak, and I had to steady myself against the back of the couch. "A few months," I repeated, the weight of her confession sinking in. "So all this time while I was trusting you, supporting you, believing in us, you were doing this?" "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant to—" "Stop!" I cut her off, holding up a hand. "Just stop. I don't want to hear it." The air between us felt heavy, suffocating. I could see the regret in her eyes, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done, and there was no coming back from it. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. "Tyler, wait," she called after me, her voice desperate. "We can talk about this. Please don't go." I paused, my hand on the doorknob, but I didn't turn around. "There's nothing left to talk about," I said quietly. "You made your choice, Emma, and now I'm making mine." As I opened the door, I heard her phone buzz on the coffee table. The sound stopped me in my tracks. I glanced over my shoulder, and my heart sank when I saw the name on the screen. It was Liam, the final nail in the coffin. Without another word, I stepped outside, letting the door close behind me. The cold night air hit me, but it couldn't numb the pain. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my wife, it was all a lie. I got into my car and drove away. The image of Liam's name on her phone burned into my mind. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't coming back. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It destroys you. And as I drove into the darkness, I realized that the life I thought I had was already gone. All that was left was to pick up the pieces and figure out how to start over.